Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Scotland Yard investigate whether Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence by leaking Downing Street emails to the dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein.
Sarah Ferguson's charity says it's closing after more embarrassing emails are published, supposedly between the former Duchess and Jeffrey Epstein.
Also ahead, the parents of Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to protect him from his killer.
We'll look at the story gripping America. The star of NBC's Today Show, Savannah Guthrie, speaks for the first time since police say her mother's home is now a crime scene after she went missing.
Bad news for space junkies. The Artemis moon mission faces a setback during its first major rehearsal. We'll have all the details.
A very good morning to you. Scotland Yard is looking into whether there should be a criminal investigation into Lord Mandelson's relationship with dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein after allegations he leaked sensitive documents to him from the heart of government.
Lots on Lord Mandelson. Pressure is also building, it should be said, on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, because they feature as well in the latest drop of files that we had from Friday. We'll bring you the detail on that in just a moment. But first, let's talk to Murray, shall we, about Lord Mandelson. So the police now reviewing this.
Yeah, exactly that. So the Met Police have said that they're going to be assessing these allegations around Peter Mandelson now. These leaked emails that suggest that Peter Mandelson was sending potentially confidential information when he was the business secretary under Gordon Brown are potentially what's being looked at here. Now, Ellen Marriott, who is the commander of the Met, she has said the Met has received a number of reports relating to alleged misconduct in public office. The reports will all be reviewed to determine if they meet the criminal threshold for investigation. And this really speaks to the fact that actually, despite what Mandelson might be saying in the Times, which we'll get to later, a lot of what we're seeing is potentially quite serious. And I think that's the big concern here. Gordon Brown has now called on the Cabinet Secretary to investigate this further. He wants the results of that investigation to be public as well. And, of course, when it comes to some of these emails, I mean, there are so many of these emails, they keep coming out. The kind of latest emails that we've found are potentially ones that Mandelson is giving Epstein some kind of a heads up about a €500 billion bank bailout. In that email, they talk about it. The next day, that bailout is confirmed and it goes ahead. And so there are now questions around Keir Starmer's judgment as Prime Minister deciding to choose him as ambassador in the first place to be our representative in the US. Stephen Flynn, who is the, obviously, SNP Westminster leader, has been accusing Keir Starmer of terrible judgment and is wanting a police investigation into this. And we think we can have a listen to what he said to Sky News now.
Yeah, we don't have that for you, I don't think,
okay.
Mari. But, yeah, as you say, pressure building, Stephen Flynn being very, very heavy in his response. I mean, the other thing, I guess, to pick up is this Times interview that Lord Mandelson's done.
Yeah, and I think we got details of that.
Sorry,
Yes.
yeah, we do.
Absolutely. Sorry, that must have been a mix-up with me. So, Peter Mandelson has given an interview to The Times. Now, he actually gave this interview before this new tranche of emails came out. However, he's then updated the interview as well with The Times. So there are quotes in the interview that are recent and some that are slightly less recent, and they've kind of mashed them together. But some of the most interesting, kind of pertinent ones are, for instance, he talks about how he was naive to trust Epstein. He says, perhaps he wanted to be a mentor and I was naive in regarding him as a good faith actor. There was no reason to shun his advice, but I was too trusting. Another time he says, hiding under a rock would be a disproportionate response to a handful of misguided historical emails, which I deeply regret sending. If it hadn't been for the emails, I'd still be in Washington. Emails sent all those years ago didn't change the relationship that I had with this monster. I feel the same about the recent download of Epstein emails none of which indicate wrongdoing or misdemeanour on my part. Now, obviously, as you can see, he's denying wrongdoing there. But many people would argue, hold on a second, perhaps it's too early to say.
I mean, what's so fascinating about this, as we understand it, those comments were made Sunday evening. And it was yesterday that more digging was done through the Epstein files that released or revealed some of these email exchanges that aren't really to do with, the most grotesque accusations towards Jeffrey Epstein, but more towards misconduct in office or potentially insider trading. And again, it shows a tone of him trying to say, this was so unfortunate, I can't remember any of it, nothing to see here is the general tone. And then another day passes and there's more that comes out. And to your point earlier about, potentially very serious, for anyone that's ever worked in financial markets and the kind of details of what is, material, non-public information and insider trading, if what is seemingly the case in these emails, and if the Met Police can use that as evidence, and I have no idea if that's going to be admissible or not, then this is unbelievably serious. I think the question is, the extent to which this was absolutely emails sent between these two people, and that can be proven or not.
Exactly, and I think also the Prime Minister being dragged into this by the fact that, as we were saying, his judgment's being questioned, but also he's trying to get Peter Mandelson out of the House of Lords. And he's basically saying he doesn't have the power to do so, but he's trying to push Mandelson to do that himself, resign from the Lords, and essentially just let this be over, rather than having this stain that, yes, he's not technically a member of the Labour Party anymore, but he's associated with the Labour Party, and therefore it's uncomfortable for the PM, to say the least, to have this Mandelson saga continue while he's still technically a member of the House of Lords, having been put there by Labour.
Thanks, Mari. Well, look, it's an extraordinary day, another astonishing day, really, and pressure, I think, growing now for Lord Mandelson to testify to Congress in the US, and also, I think, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor as well.
James Matthews spoke to a member of the House Oversight Committee, which is conducting the investigation, and asked about whether or not Andrew should testify.
I want him to continue to come forward. We've asked him multiple times now to come forward and testify before our committee. We'll do it under his terms. But the more he hides, the more files we will find. And so we will find the information regardless of whether he comes to us and testifies. And so it's best for him to come and just tell us what he knows, try to clear his name as best he can. But until then, we're going to continue to probe and find more files. And at some point, I don't know what point, at some point, if we find more evidence of crimes, then the law enforcement, either here in the UK, needs to make a decision about when they should go after him.
Do you think that's a prospect?
I don't know. I'm going to let the evidence do the talking. But certainly if the evidence shows that he committed crimes, and it's prosecutorial crimes that he can be sentenced to, then certainly I think law enforcement should apply the law the same way they would anyone else.
And Lord Mandelson, do you think he should come to the United States and give evidence?
It's the same thing. And I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican or Labor, whatever country you're in, whatever title you have. Everyone who was involved or committed crimes should be held accountable.
James Matthews there in Congress yesterday. Now, we've talked a lot about Lord Mandelson, of course. Let's just run you through the latest emails involving Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson. Overnight, her charity, Sarah's Trust, announced it will close for the foreseeable future following fresh revelations about the former Duchess's relationship with Mr Epstein. More emails to Epstein from a sender believed to be Miss Ferguson emerged on Monday, including 2 from 2010, which is after Mr Epstein's conviction.
So one email, an account called Sarah, told Jeffrey Epstein he was a legend, and then added, "I really don't have the words to describe my love, gratitude for your generosity and kindness. I'm at your service. Just marry me."
In another email, a user called Ferg, which Sky News believes to be Miss Ferguson, asked Epstein whether he was going to employ her. He replies that he will visit London in the coming weeks. The account called Ferg responds, "My friendship is steadfast to the end, even after the body is cold. Love you now and always, and I know you do too."
I just want to bring you a 2011 interview Miss Ferguson said in this. She said, "I would never have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. I abhor paedophilia and any sexual abuse of children. It was a gigantic error of judgment." Important to bring you what Sarah Ferguson has said in defence of her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and obviously, as we've said throughout, just being named in the Epstein files, not a sign of wrongdoing.
Meanwhile, Bill and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify before Congress in the Epstein investigation. Our US correspondent David Blevins has more.
The Clintons have capitulated. That's how they're framing it here on Capitol Hill. For months, Bill and Hillary Clinton had refused to testify before the congressional committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein. They said subpoenas issued by the Republican chair of that committee, James Comer, were invalid and not legally enforceable. The former president and former Secretary of State accused him of targeting them for opposing Donald Trump and vowed to fight this. But things changed when some Democrats on the panel joined Republicans in a vote recommending that they be charged with criminal contempt. If the Justice Department chose to prosecute them, they faced up to a year in jail and fines of up to $100,000. President Clinton had offered to sit for a 4-hour transcribed interview. Mrs. Clinton had offered to make a sworn declaration instead of testifying. But the chairman of the committee described that as a desire for special treatment and an affront to the American people's desire for transparency. Bill Clinton will be the first former president to appear before Congress since Gerald Ford did so way back in 1983. When President Trump was subpoenaed by the committee investigating the January 6th raid on the Capitol, he sued the panel and they backed down. Bill Clinton was acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein, but has said he never visited his private island and ended contact with him 2 decades ago. Hillary Clinton says she never met or spoke to Jeffrey Epstein.
David Blevins, there will continue looking at the fallout of this story, the pressure on Mandelson to lose his peerage, the pressure for both Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Lord Mandelson to testify in the US. We've got a couple of political guests coming up later this hour to do just that.
Now, the parents of schoolboy Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to manage the behaviour of his killer.
The 15-year-old was stabbed to death by another student during a school lunch break. It was a year ago today.
A new independent review found that All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield failed to identify Harvey's killer as a risk, despite reports of him carrying a knife. Our North of England correspondent Caterina Vitozzi has this report.
Missed opportunities and serious failings. A new review into Harvey Wilgoose's death in a school corridor, stabbed by a fellow pupil, has identified several times where the 15-year-old school could have done more to keep him safe. Harvey Wilgoose was stabbed by Mohammed Umar Khan, also 15, on the 3rd of February last year. This is CCTV from that day. Khan stabbed Harvey with a 13-centimetre hunting knife that he'd brought with him into school.
Umar Khan was sentenced to 16 years in prison after a trial here at Sheffield Crown Court. During the trial, we learned about violent and increasingly concerning behaviour of Khan, but this new review shows also serious failings to identify him as a risk much earlier on.
Umar Khan moved to All Saints in spring 2024, but 130 incidents of his violent and weapons-related behaviour from his previous school were not reviewed or acted upon at All Saints. In October, pupils reported Khan had a knife and a BB gun on a school trip. He was searched, but there was no other follow-up. There was no follow-up in December either, when an axe was found in his bag at home. And no one searched Khan on the day that he killed Harvey, despite a fresh knife allegation against him.
To see in black and white the chances they had to step in, the signs that they were missed, and how many opportunities that there was to protect our boy is something that nobody should be going through. We'll always be angry by what happened to Harvey, but more than anything, I'm determined to unite people, bring changes for the better. I'm determined that no other family should be sitting in court listening to how their child was killed.
The CEO of St Clair's Multi-Academy Trust, which runs the school, says it's clear the report has identified areas for improvement and that it's already implemented robust measures and will continue to take action. The Department for Education told us that it too will reflect on the report's findings and ask all schools to do the same so that no pupil is put in harm's way. Catherine Totzi, Sky News, Sheffield.
Now, NASA's groundbreaking mission to send a rocket around the moon could be delayed. It's after a liquid hydrogen leak was found during the testing of Artemis 2. It was discovered during the wet rehearsal, which is supposed to give engineers a chance to practice loading and removing fuel from the rocket. And I guess the big question now is, does that launch actually go ahead?
Let's bring in Thomas Moore, who knows the answer to all these questions for us, thankfully. Thomas, good morning to you. So what happened last night?
So this was a really tough test for this rocket. It's only the second time that it's ever flown, and this should be the first time that it's going to have humans on board, so they want to get this right. Now, what they were doing was fuelling up the rocket with 2 million litres of super-chilled hydrogen and 750 million litres of oxygen. That's the propellant when you mix it together. But the problem is with hydrogen is those molecules are so small and they're being injected so cold and at such high pressure that it really finds any leak in the fueling system, and that's exactly what happened. Twice they had to abort the refueling while they tried to problem solve, and then we got to 5 minutes 15 seconds before the simulated launch, and they decided that levels were too high to safely continue because it is a safety risk, and that's why they're going to need to go back to the drawing board, assess the data, see if they can problem solve and make sure that this can launch as intended, safely on Sunday.
I mean, I guess that's a big question. You know, we're gearing up to it on Sky News. I'm sure lots of people, you know, excited about this potential launch. Is it actually going to happen?
It is really exciting. It's the first time in more than 50 years that humans have gone around the moon, and they'll see stuff that no human eyes have seen from that position. So very exciting. But it's for people on the top of a rocket that really they're not sure is completely safe to fly. So they're going to need to resolve this before they can go ahead. And you know, let's take a look at the 4 astronauts. These have been in quarantine since January the 23rd in Houston, Texas, assuming that they will actually take off. So that's Reed Wiseman, who is the commander, and he has been in space for 165 days. Then you've got the pilot, Victor Glover. He's also been to space many times, and he is going to be taking a major role in the mission. He's the first person of colour to be leaving Earth's orbit. Then we've got...
Is he really? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary. And we've also got the first woman, there you are, Christina Cook, who, again, has a great deal of space experience. She's one of the longest-serving females in orbit, but now going to the moon again for the first time. And then finally, you've got Jeremy Hansen. He's a Canadian. Again, the first non-American to be leaving Earth's orbit. And he is actually a newbie. He has not been to space before.
Wow, so for all 3 of those, the milestone is leaving Earth's orbit, which... I want to get into more detail with you. Are you sticking around for next hour as well?
Absolutely.
Great, more questions. By the way, those graphics, are those their graphics or our graphics? Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very nice.
Lots of space chat.
Making me very excited. It's a shame it might be delayed. Thomas, we'll see you again next hour. Thank you.
We'll be talking an awful lot about Lord Mandelson on the programme today. And look, the questions, I guess, just keep coming about whether or not he did leak sensitive government information about what the police are going to do about that. They're certainly looking into it. Should he be a Lord anymore? Should he go and testify in the US? All questions to put to our next guest, the Health Minister, Karen Smith. Great to have you here. You're here to talk about cancer, which we will get to. But I just want to talk about the pretty astonishing, I guess, claims that are being levied against Lord Mandelson. So police now looking into whether a criminal offence was committed, about whether he leaked sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire paedophile, when he was in government. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, it is shocking. It is astonishing. Whatever word we can use, I think every half hour at the moment we're getting new revelations through that. And I mean, how do I feel at heart? This is started about the trafficking, that exploitation of women and girls. And I think any of us that are involved in this sort of work will support those women and girls over many years. Should we continue to be shocked by some of the male behaviour around this? Yes, we should always. But yeah, it is astonishing. It is astonishing, and some of these emails now we're seeing are astonishing, as you say.
I mean, I guess, you know, you're in government. You know how important sensitivity of data is. I mean, people are going to be worried that this kind of thing is just going on, that people are just forwarding stuff, that, you know, I mean, it is kind of unbelievable.
I mean...
This is market-sensitive stuff.
Yes, but these emails I think you're referring to are from 2009, and the world is quite different from 2009 these days. I mean, obviously, one always needs to be careful, but very, very clear guidance on the ministerial code and behaviour and access to...
People knew it was wrong in 2009 as well.
I think that's right. No, they did. But we know more about even technology and so on and so forth now, and control by governments on that sort of behaviour is stronger. So... Okay. I mean, it seems to me like yesterday, but it is obviously, you know, 15, 16 years ago.
Should Peter Mandelson go and testify in the United States?
I mean, you know, we've been very clear that anybody with any evidence around the whole Epstein issue
I'm just going to come in because
and should be as open as possible. And
I'm just going to come in, if I may, because I just recognise that line that we've heard from Number 10 before, that anyone with evidence should go and testify. I'm asking you directly: should Lord Mandelson go and testify in the US?
I mean, people should support the women, the victims. Should
Lord Mandelson
I think people should take part and
I'm
should
not asking
support.
about people. I'm asking about a specific person. Well, Lord Mandelson, should he go and testify?
Ideally, people should. Anybody who has got information and should
Lord Mandelson go and testify?
Well, that's a yes, isn't it? Because anybody who's got information should support the investigation. Should be as open, you know, as they can be, and as whatever they know to support any investigation, whether that's there or, as you specifically highlighted here now about those emails, and as you say, sensitive government information. It should all be open, of course.
Keir Starmer said that he doesn't think Lord Mandelson should be a lord anymore. So why doesn't he do something about it?
So. Again, you know, we're all learning the rules. Peter Mandelson is not the first Lord to have been in disrepute, but this issue is about bringing forward new legislation. We don't have a majority in the House of Lords, so that has to be done in cooperation with all parties. That's why we've asked for all parties to come together to look at this and make sure that any legislation that comes forward is fit for purpose. And it's not just about one individual. It is that would be a wider issue. So we have set that process in train, but it's not as simple as, you know, people understand we've got a majority in the Commons, we can bring forward emergency legislation. I brought forward emergency legislation last week about the doctors, but you do need to get that through the House of Lords, and it needs to be right, and it needs to be wider than on one person.
I do understand the kind of difficulties of legislation, but, you know, we were told Prince Andrew couldn't be stripped of his title of Prince, right, because we were said at the time he was born a prince, so there's nothing he can do about it. But King Charles found a way of doing it to his own brother. So I guess people looking at this will be like, why can't Keir Starmer find a way of getting rid of the title?
But we are doing that. By saying that we could bring forward forward legislation.
So is that happening? What's happening then?
Well, because he's asked to work with cross parties.
But what is happening today?
Yesterday.
What's happening now?
Yesterday, we approached for all parties to come together to look at what that might look like, and whether that's a runner.
Approaching all parties to come together
to look at legislation and what might need to be. That's exactly the first process.
So it's going to happen then?
Well, it depends on if you can get all parties together to agree that. That's the step, and I would hope that, particularly given the public interest and the clear issue around the reputation of the Lords and the reputation of politics, that all parties would want to work together to do exactly that. And that's what Keir Starmer has asked people to do. That is the action.
I was quite struck by what you said at the beginning about that we should continue to be shocked by the behaviour of predatory men, I guess, but perhaps it's not always a surprise. I just wondered if I could get your reflections on what I think is a pretty astonishing interview with Peter Mandelson in the Times today. He talks a lot about how difficult this has all been for him. It felt like being killed without actually dying. I've had a lot of bad luck, no doubt some of it of my own making. I need a reset.
I mean, again, that is shocking. But
do you think he's a victim in this?
I think I've certainly seen, I'm sure you've seen and interviewed over time, men that have been involved in similar sorts of behaviour seem to not be able to recognise their own their own self in that. And that is part of them having to deal with the level of seriousness and seeing it how other people see it. And people shouldn't put that out in the public domain. Having those interviews, it is a time for reflection and recognise how serious this is.
Do you think Peter Mandelson realises how serious it is?
I think by the sound of that interview, that would suggest not, but I'm not sure when that interview took place before the latest tranche of emails.
Well, he knew what happened before the emails.
He knew. He's
right?
He's one of the only people that did know. Absolutely, absolutely.
Finally, you've got a story to tell us, an important story to tell us about the NHS and cancer care in particular. And the government's going to be covering travel costs of children with cancer. What's happening?
It's really important for families and children who get diagnosed with cancer. That's shocking. For anybody, I've had a cancer diagnosis. It's shocking as an adult, but to have your child diagnosed, and people have to travel. There are 13 specialist centres, so people generally have to travel for that really specialist care because it's different having cancer in children and young people. Long campaigned for. I met people at a reception at Downing Street last night, hosted by the Prime Minister, who've been campaigning for this for 2 decades. So we're really pleased, as part of our cancer plan, to be able to support those families with those travel costs so that they're not having to think about paying for that travel and how they're going to cope with their family income at the same time as supporting their children.
I'm sorry about your own cancer diagnosis. How are you doing now?
I'm one of many people, particularly women, caught in a rising dose of melanoma. So my warning this week is talking about sunbed use in under 18s in particular. We're making more stringent action on that. It is rising, be very careful in the sun. But for these children and young people who haven't had that really dedicated support and focus on them and their families, it is a really important part of our cancer plan to support them and to make sure they're not thinking about worrying as much about other things in their family, whether that's feeding the rest of their family, other household bills and other parts of the cost of living crisis that they're undergoing at this particular time. So it's a really welcome by them, and I'm really pleased to be able to announce that today.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen Smith, speaking to us. There will be continuing our coverage of the latest on Lord Mandelson, speaking to a member of the House of Lords who was also an advisor to Alistair Darling, who may have had a few views at the time about Lord Mandelson. It'd be very interesting to get the take of Catherine Cloud.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. A reminder of the headlines this morning. Police are reviewing allegations that Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence after documents released by the US Justice Department appear to show the former cabinet minister leaking market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while he was serving in Gordon Brown's government.
The family of Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to protect him. The 15-year-old was stabbed to death by another student at school in Sheffield last year. An independent review has revealed the school failed to assess the risk his killer posed.
The NASA has been forced to terminate its Artemis 2 dress rehearsal countdown due to a liquid hydrogen leak. NASA says work's underway to drain the rocket's tanks. The rocket was expected to launch later this week, but that will only happen if a full test launch takes place in the next couple of days.
Now, we want to talk to you about a story from Arizona now, because police are searching for the 84-year-old mother of the Today Show presenter Savannah Guthrie, and they say they're now treating her home as a crime scene. So Nancy Guthrie was last seen by her family at her house near Tucson on Saturday night and was reported missing on Sunday around lunchtime. That led to a search using a helicopter, drones and dogs. So very, very worrying story. Lots we don't know at this point. Wilf, you know Savannah well. You work with Savannah.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously NBC is part of Comcast, which is the parent company of Sky. But yeah, more than that, you know, I've worked very closely with Savannah in my time in the US, and this is grabbing huge attention because she is the biggest star of breakfast television in America. The Today Show is the biggest breakfast show on NBC, and to be honest, Savannah's probably the most talented broadcaster I've ever worked with, but she's also so unbelievably nice and supportive. So my heart just completely goes out to her and her family. And this extraordinary story that has, given obviously her status, grabbed attention across America, but also because of how peculiar it is. And as you alluded to, based on comments from the county sheriff's office, you know, they think she was taken from her home, and hence the scale of investigation that's going on. But yeah, absolutely thoughts and prayers with Savannah at this moment and her family, and hopefully Nancy Guthrie is found alive and well. But as time goes on, of course, people will continue to get increasingly worried.
Yeah, and as you say, those remarks from the sheriff are very troubling indeed.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer says that Lord Mandelson should lose his peerage and testify in the US, but there are big questions around how he was appointed US ambassador in the first place. We can speak now to Catherine McLeod, former special advisor to Alistair Darling. A very good morning to you, Catherine. There are so many details I want to get into with you, but I guess the first question I have, how sensitive, in your eyes, was some of the information that seemingly has been shared at a time before it became public?
Well, I think the sensitivity of the exchanges couldn't be exaggerated. The country, the government was facing a very difficult financial crisis. It was working hard, fighting hard to emerge from it with the economy intact. That's what they were trying to do. So I can't imagine that there was any conversations or deliberations that would be more sensitive than was happening at the time.
There's talk of misconduct in public office. There's also talk of insider trading. I mean, do you think if these emails are legitimate, if they're proven, that both of those crimes could be met?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But what I do know is that the leaking of that information was at best immoral. Whether or not it's a criminal offence, I don't know enough to be able to say. But it was a terrible, terrible breach of trust amongst his colleagues.
What do you think Alistair Darling would have thought of this?
Well, Alistair Darling would be absolutely shocked to the core. He was a man of tremendous integrity. He was, along with the colleagues in the Treasury, was working day and night to do their best to stabilise the British banking system and the economy. He got on OK with Peter. He was surprised, I think, that he came back, but he did recognise that he was an experienced politician. So he would be utterly shocked. He would. I mean, we knew that there was, that we weren't aligned with, that Alistair wasn't aligned with everyone in government, but he would have been shocked at the scale of this treachery.
Do you think that if somebody profited off this information, I mean, how bad is that if that is the case?
Well, it's terrible. I mean, insider trading is an offence. Whether or not this qualifies as insider trading, I don't know. But if it's an offence, Lord Mandelson will be prosecuted, and he is going to have to face the consequences of what he's done.
Of course, police are investigating whether any of this information warrants a further criminal investigation. We should say that at this stage. A day or so earlier, as everyone was pouring through all the latest cache of Epstein files, the sort of biggest business-related story, when he was business secretary-related story that had come to light was in and around a policy that came out about increasing taxes on bankers' bonuses in this Gordon Brown era of government, this Alistair Darling as Chancellor era of government. And there seemingly was an exchange between Lord Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein about how to pressure Alistair Darling to reverse this policy. Do you remember that unfolding and the pressure that Alistair Darling may or may not have faced, as it happens, from the JP Morgan CEO on this particular policy?
Yes, I do. I think it was Jamie Dimon, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was very, very angry. It was him, I think, that Peter Mandelson told to mildly threaten Alistair. He threatened him with not building the JP Morgan headquarters in London. He said that they wouldn't buy any more UK debt. Alistair pointed out to him that they were buying UK debt because it was a good deal for them. And altogether, he was, trying to hold a pistol to Alistair's head, which Alistair more or less said, well, fire it if you like, but this is what is going to happen. And the bankers' bonuses went ahead. Bankers generally, although the government had bailed them out and they were there because of government's interventions, were never grateful. They always thought that they should get as much as they could for nothing. So I think he was surprised at the scale of this man's fury. And, perhaps if since he was bolstered by one of Alistair's cabinet colleagues, perhaps he felt that he was challenging Alistair with more confidence than he might have in the past.
Do you think that Lord Mandelson understands the gravity of some of these details, based on some of the interviews he's given since?
Well, I read Katie Paul's interview with him, which I think was done last weekend. I think he obviously doesn't. He perhaps is divorced from reality. He thinks that, I don't know if he thinks he's untouchable, if he's just got such a sense of entitlement that he can do whatever he likes. But certainly somebody that had a little bit of humility or self-awareness would not have done an interview like that.
And just finally, we've seen comments from Gordon Brown, and he wants a full Cabinet Office inquiry. You've reflected on how you think Alistair Darling might have felt. More broadly, I mean, those moments, they were incredibly tense after the immediate aftermath of the financial crisis. I guess everyone in government was mucking together to do what they could to pull the country out of an incredibly tough position. How does it make you feel personally if a key member of the team wasn't fighting for the collective in the same way?
Well, I just think it beggars belief. I think that I just cannot believe that somebody so senior, with access to such sensitive information, was indulging in such treacherous behaviour. I think that in our own personal lives, we wouldn't expect behaviour like that. And certainly when the future of the country was at stake, we wouldn't behave, and we shouldn't think that that kind of behaviour is ever going to happen.
Catherine, thanks so much for joining us. Catherine McLeod there, former senior advisor to Alistair Darling. Reminder that just being mentioned in these caches of emails does not establish any formal wrongdoing.
Now, we're talking healthcare next, because after months of delays, the government's expected to soon release its long-awaited National Cancer Plan for England. And look, we know hospitals are struggling to keep up with demand, patients waiting longer for treatment after diagnosis, and obviously that then leads to worse outcomes as well.
Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, has delved into the challenges and shortcomings of the current state of care.
The UK is not alone in the challenges being posed by cancer, but other countries are achieving better results.
Welcome to a cold morning in Copenhagen.
In the 1990s, cancer survival rates in Denmark lagged behind many of its neighbours. But 25 years ago, they made cancer a political and health priority, and it's worked. Peter is 69. He's been diagnosed with bowel cancer. He's undergoing a month-long training regime before his operation after an AI algorithm picked him out of thousands of patients.
His complication risk drops tremendously from the 35% to below 20%. So a very considerable reduction in the complication risk.
He's been targeted.
He's been targeted.
Because of his age, comorbidities.
Exactly.
Because of his physical condition.
Yes, exactly.
Like the NHS, Denmark provides state-funded healthcare which is free at the point of use. But long waits are almost unheard of. And here, their cancer survival rates have also been improving.
Man heler bedre. Jo bedre din kondition jo bedre heler du, og jo hurtigere heler du.
But Denmark didn't just have one successful cancer plan. Over the past 25 years, it's had 5. They started by improving patient care and saving lives. Now, they're looking at how to give their patients a second chance at life after their cancer.
Well, Ashish joins us now. Look, for many people, nothing can be more important than the government getting it right when it comes to cancer. What is your kind of takeaway on the announcement we've seen?
The announcement we're about to see tomorrow is long overdue and very, very welcome. The government's been looking very closely at the Danish model. They've had 5 cancer plans. So they've been going with their cancer plans for 25 years. Every 5 years, they update their cancer plan. So we're starting this journey, but I know that Wes Streeting and his team of health ministers have had a look at the Danish model and said, what are they doing right? So we have this wealth of experience. Denmark and the UK started off together about 25 years ago, languishing at the bottom of these health tables with cancer outcomes. The Danes actually decided to do something about it. So much faster treatment, much faster diagnosis. And now they're looking at one of the oncologists I met, they said, we've been so successful with our cancer treatment, we're now looking at what we do with cancer survivors. So they're almost at the end of that journey where they're looking to see how do we improve cancer care for people who've survived cancer, integrate them back into society, deal with the trauma of going through cancer treatment and making sure that they are ready to enjoy their lives post-cancer. We're at the beginning of that. We haven't met our cancer target since 2014. That's 85% of patients being seen within that 62-day referral. If you're not seen early on, your outcome for cancer will be much, much worse. I think it's 10% likelihood of fatality or mortality if you're not seen within that first month. So every day is crucial for a cancer outcome. We're going to see lots of measures announced later today. The trails have been coming for the last 2 weeks. I know the government wants to get it right. It's been delayed by a year, but it's been doing a lot of groundwork. So faster interventions, cancer diagnostic centres, more treatment, better staff, cutting-edge technology, using artificial intelligence as well.
Is there room for optimism once all of that's honest?
There's lots of room for optimism because cancer therapies, cancer interventions have kept improving. We're talking about cancer vaccines, and Thomas will tell you more about it as well when you speak to him, but the outcomes for cancer are good if it's caught early on, right? There is no universal single cure for cancer, but science has moved on so far now that if your cancer is caught early on, then the outcomes will be much, much better. And it's changing all the time. You know, the medicines and the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy and everything else that goes along into the care for cancer patients.
Ashish, great stuff. Thank you very much. Well, Thomas is here, as you said, but not in fact to talk about cancer.
Yeah.
But he can.
He crept in as well while we're talking to Ashish, as if by magic. And you're here to talk about this breaking news about the Artemis mission, so the kind of groundbreaking trip around the moon.
Yeah,
What's going on?
the first mission to the moon in 53 years is going to have to wait another month. They have decided to scrub all attempt to launch in February because of this hydrogen leak they had during what they call the wet dress rehearsal. That's when they fuel up this huge rocket with 2 million litres of hydrogen and 750 million litres of oxygen. That's the propellant. But the problem is that hydrogen is a really small molecule injected at minus 253 degrees Celsius. So that has a big impact on those seals between the refuelling hose and the rocket. And that's where they seem to have a leak once again. And there you can see the rocket, which is as high as Big Ben on the Houses of Parliament. It is vast. And the most powerful rocket that NASA has ever built. Now, they need to get all that fuel back out and make sure the rocket is safe. Then they'll be looking at that seal to see whether there is something they can do to try and fix it. They've tried warming it up to try and reseat it against the base of the rocket because it's right down at the bottom there. You can see that little grey box. That's where all that fuel is being pumped in, and that's where they've had a much higher concentration of hydrogen than they would like, and that puts everybody at risk. And of course, this time, it's the 4 astronauts who would be at the top there on launch day, and safety comes first, obviously.
Two questions come to mind immediately. I mean, how common is a delay like this in a big launch? I mean, is this like, oh my gosh, end of the world? It could now mean delays every single month, or is it kind of normal? And what does this sort of cost delay?
Hydrogen-fueled rockets, it's notorious that these things are delayed because, as I said, there's just the fuel itself, that tiny molecule, and the so cold and so on. So the shuttle had big problems as well, and the first version of this rocket, when it went up in 2022 without anybody on board, that was delayed several times. In fact, they had to roll it back to the hangar to try and fix it on 2 occasions, and then they came out. So the whole thing was delayed by 3 months. Now, NASA said they thought they had fixed this, but clearly there are still issues, and they need to look at the data and work out some way of sorting this out.
And as you say, 4 people on board, so it's the kind of thing that it just can't take any risk with, I guess, at all. So there you go, more moon launch delayed till March. Have to wait a bit more.
I've still got questions about it, though.
Go on, then.
Even though it's been delayed, can we do them next hour?
Yeah.
You still around? Great. Thanks, Thomas. Right, let's have a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the week looks pretty unsettled. There's loads of rain about. Spells of rain in the south, some snow on northern hills as well, and it's going to stay pretty gloomy, windy and chilly this morning. Northeastern Britain will see showers as well. Southwestern Britain and the southeast of Ireland also look wet, so it is your classic grim February day. Southern England and Wales is going to see the rain become a bit more widespread by midday, and elsewhere there'll be a little change. It's going to be colder overall with a significant wind chill. Welsh Peats can expect some snow.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
After the break, we're going to be joined by the lead curator of a new samurai exhibition at the British Museum. Don't go anywhere for that.
OK, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. The next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
Listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war, and all around us was destruction and the sound of battle. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. A major exhibition delving into the history of samurai warriors is opening at the British Museum today. It explores the evolution of their story, one that spans a millennium and is shrouded in myth and legend.
We can talk now to the lead curator of the Samurai exhibition, Rosina Buckland, who joins us.
By the way, that
now.
was a great intro. I'm intrigued now as
Yeah,
well.
I'm so... It's really interesting, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, the really obvious one, what is a samurai? Because we have this kind of Hollywood version of it in our heads, but maybe it's nothing like that. What is a samurai?
That is part of the story. Yes, we have this image of the male warrior in this distinctive armour holding a sword, but samurai were many things over the centuries, and the exhibition delves into all of that history. They started as warriors, but they were also bureaucrats, administrators, very much cultural figures over those hundreds of years.
Bureaucrats doesn't sound very exciting.
Absolutely essential to running society. They did it very well, and that's why the governments were successful, why they survived for so long.
But were they great warriors?
They were, yes, during the earlier centuries.
And talk to us a bit more about that. What made them so great?
There's a sophistication to the armour. I think that's what we're showing in the exhibition with some very fine examples. We are also explaining that archery was very important. They were very skilled horsemen, horse riders and archers, and there's a range of weapons that they were using that made the battles fierce, but the samurai were very skilled at their craft.
And we're looking at some of the armour on the screen now, and it looks unbelievable, I have to say. What time period are we talking about? Like, when do they first emerge, I guess? How long ago?
The samurai emerged as mercenaries from the 900s onwards. They're being used by the imperial court as their proxy warriors, and then they wrest power away from that court and establish their own governments. And yeah, the armour evolves over time, so we have different examples in the exhibition showing how it goes from this mounted archery form of combat through to the use of guns, and that affects the armour.
Well, so we've heard archery, guns and great armour. What about the swords?
Yes, the swords are in there too. We have very finely forged swords, but they're not coming in until the later centuries, when there's more hand-to-hand combat on the ground.
Were they... I mean, so is it short-sighted of us, maybe other people don't think this, but when you think samurai, your first thought is samurai sword. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that's not as important in the earlier centuries. Really? It's a status symbol. It's always being carried, but not being used so much on the ground.
Tom Cruise movie's a bit misleading then.
Disappointing. Are there any particular stories of individual samurai that you think, oh my goodness, this like sums up like why I love this period, or what's so exciting about it?
I think one of the most famous that we feature in the exhibition is the founder of the government in the early 1600s, Tokugawa Ieyasu, and he's a character in many movies and TV shows because he made this massive achievement of unifying the country for the first time, really.
So was he a goodie, was he a baddie, what was he like, or a bit of a mix?
It depends who you were talking to.
Yeah, that's why it's interesting, right, isn't it? It's kind of...
I love the goodie or baddie.
But I think this is, you know, this is why I kind of love it in a way, because people are hard to characterise, aren't they? Like, so what kind of... He unified the country, but I guess, was he pretty violent? What kind of...
I think
was he caught up in?
He was more skilled at commanding other people. You stay out of the battle yourself and you get other people to run it for you.
Very smart.
But also very cultured. He was practising no theatre as actor and musician, and we have some of that material. Also was a connoisseur of incense, and we have an incense game in the exhibition.
I have to say, you have sold this really very well.
We should do a little group outing,
yeah.
a little team trip.
So this starts when?
Today.
Today.
Yes, right. It opens today.
There we go.
Perfect. Weekend plans.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
very much appreciated at the British Museum, starting today. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have all of the very latest top news, including, of course, ongoing fallout, in particular for Lord Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor from the Epstein files. We'll be right back.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Still, we're getting the fallout from the Epstein files.
Scotland Yard will investigate whether Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence by leaking Downing Street emails to the dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein.
Sarah Ferguson's charity says it's closing after more embarrassing emails are published, supposedly between the former Duchess and Jeffrey Epstein.
Also ahead, the parents of Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to protect him from his killer.
We'll look at the story gripping America. The star of NBC's Today Show, Savannah Guthrie, speaks for the first time since police say her mother's home is now a crime scene and she is missing.
Bad news gets worse for space junkies this morning. A rehearsal for the Artemis moon mission goes wrong, and the launch is pushed back a whole month.
Hello, good morning. Well, Scotland Yard is now looking into whether there should be a criminal investigation into Lord Mandelson's relationship with the dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. It's after allegations he leaked sensitive documents to him from the heart of government.
Pressure's also building on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson. They also feature in the latest drop of files from Friday, and we'll bring you all the detail on that in just a moment.
First, let's talk to Mari about exactly what is going on. So the police not yet investigating, they're reviewing, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. They're assessing the information and they've received several complaints, and so they are looking into whether that kind of criminal threshold has been met. They've given us a statement from the Met commander herself, Ellen Marriott, where she says the Met has received a number of reports relating to alleged misconduct in public office. The reports will all be reviewed to determine if they meet the criminal threshold for investigation. And these are realistically in relation to some of those potentially emails between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson while Peter Mandelson was this business secretary under Gordon Brown as Prime Minister. Gordon Brown has now actually come out and said he also is quite concerned, being, of course, part of his premiership. He says he wants the Cabinet Secretary to investigate further into all of these emails and exactly what has gone on, and he's called it wholly unacceptable, and he wants the results of that inquiry to be published and to be made public. So we asked at the lobby briefing yesterday to the Prime Minister's official spokesperson about the Cabinet Secretary's investigations, whether they would be published, and they wouldn't answer us on that. So the real question is, once they do then finish looking at this, will we find out what they find out, or will they keep that behind closed doors? I think people are really going to want to know that. And of course, Peter Mandelson is this kind of shadow that's overshadowing Keir Starmer at a time when he's trying to talk about other things. He's just got back from China, and actually he's having to say, I don't want him in the House of Lords anymore, I want him to go, and basically talking about trying to find ways of getting rid of Peter Mandelson from the House of Lords if he won't go willingly, which is an extraordinary position to be in.
I guess on the question of whether he'll go willingly or not, we have a hint at that based on a Sunday Times interview, which we think was done partly before the weekend but updated on Sunday evening, which reveals once again a sort of lack of awareness of the scale of all of this.
I think that's the tone that a lot of people have got from this article in the Times. I think people feel that, and you were speaking to Karen Smythe earlier about this, and she seemed to suggest that he doesn't maybe understand the seriousness of some of these emails and some of what has come out in these files, and how that's going to make people feel, how that's going to make the public feel at a time where trust in politics is perhaps already lower as it is, and actually that needs to be replenished, not depleted. Let's go through some of the quotes from this article and this interview, because they are quite surprising, let's say.
Good adjective to use,
Let's
Mari.
be diplomatic. So first of all, he says perhaps he wanted, he's talking about Epstein here, perhaps he wanted to be a mentor, and I was naive in regarding him as a good faith actor. There was no reason to shun his advice, but I was too trusting. He then goes on to say, hiding under a rock would be a disproportionate response to a handful of misguided historical emails, which I deeply regret sending. If it hadn't been for those emails, I'd still be in Washington. Emails sent all those years ago didn't change the relationship that I had with this monster. I feel the same about the recent download of Epstein files, none of which indicate wrongdoing or misdemeanour on my part.
Wow.
Yeah, they speak for themselves, don't they?
But again, just to go into the detail, we think this was late Sunday night when the latest cache of documents was out, but all of the analysis hadn't necessarily come out. Because if it is proven that many of these emails that we're reflecting on today are his, it's very hard to conclude his final line that there's an overreaction or that there doesn't imply any wrongdoing. As it happens, not related to what many people have talked about Jeffrey Epstein for a long time about sexual crimes, but about government impropriety.
Yeah, I think the thing that is quite extraordinary is not just the tone of Peter Mandelson's response in that interview with The Times, but also the fact that realistically, if you look at the number of files that were released over the weekend, it is nigh on impossible that Peter Mandelson could have gone through every single one by the time he gave this interview on Sunday evening and had 100% guaranteed he was clear and happy with every single one of those emails in this enormity of files. So to me, I think the thing that is surprising is that he felt it was a good idea to say nothing to see here before he had actually probably had the chance to go through them with a fine-tooth comb.
And also, the one person who knows what's in the emails is surely Lord Mandelson.
The guy who sent them.
We are finding about on Friday, but, if the whole thing is completely mind-boggling. Mari, thank you very much for talking us through that. And now we talked a lot about Lord Mandelson, so let's just run you through the latest emails involving Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson.
Well, overnight, her charity Sarah's Trust announced it will close for the foreseeable future following fresh revelations about the former Duchess's relationship with Mr Epstein. More emails to Mr Epstein from a sender believed to be Miss Ferguson emerged on Monday, including 2 from 2010, which is after Mr Epstein's conviction.
So just to look through the detail of these emails, in one email, an account called Sarah told Epstein he was a legend and added, I really don't have the words to describe my love, gratitude for your generosity and kindness. I am at your service. Just marry me.
In another email, a user called Ferg, which Sky News believes to be Miss Ferguson, asked Epstein when he was going to employ her. He replies that he will visit London in the coming weeks. The account called Ferg then responds, my friendship is steadfast to the end, even after the body is cold. Love you now and always.
Now, it's important, of course, to give the point of view of Sarah Ferguson. The closest that we probably have is a 2011 interview where she said, I would never have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. I abhor paedophilia and any sexual abuse of children. It was a gigantic error of judgment. That is from Sarah Ferguson in a previous interview. And also, look, it's important to say, as we have been reflecting on, being named in these emails is not a sign in itself of wrongdoing.
Of course, all of this raises questions as to whether Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Lord Mandelson would testify in Congress if formally requested to do so. James Matthews caught up with a member of the House Oversight Committee, which is conducting the current investigation on this matter, and asked about the need for Andrew to testify.
I want him to continue to come forward. We've asked him multiple times now to come forward and testify before our committee. We'll do it under his terms. But the more he hides, the more files we will find. And so we will find the information regardless of whether he comes to us and testifies. And so it's best for him to come and just tell us what he knows, try to clear his name as best he can. But until then, we're going to continue to probe and find more files. And at some point, I don't know what point, at some point, if we find more evidence of crimes, then the law enforcement, either here in the UK, needs to make a decision about when they should go after him.
Do you think that's a prospect?
I don't know. I'm going to let the evidence do the talking. But certainly if the evidence shows that he committed crimes and it's prosecutorial crimes that he can be sentenced to, then certainly I think law enforcement should apply the law the same way they would anyone else.
And Lord Mandelson, do you think he should come to the United States and give evidence?
It's the same thing. And I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican or Labor, whatever country you're in, whatever title you have, everyone who was involved or committed crimes should be held accountable.
So, look, pressure building for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to testify, also Lord Mandelson as well. The people who have said that they'll testify are Bill and Hillary Clinton. They've said that they will appear before Congress. Here's our US correspondent, David Blevins.
The Clintons have capitulated. That's how they're framing it here on Capitol Hill. For months, Bill and Hillary Clinton had refused to testify before the congressional committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein. They said subpoenas issued by the Republican chair of that committee, James Comer, were invalid and not legally enforceable. The former president and former Secretary of State accused him of targeting them for opposing Donald Trump and vowed to fight this. But things changed when some Democrats on the panel joined Republicans in a vote recommending that they be charged with criminal contempt. If the Justice Department chose to prosecute them, they faced up to a year in jail and fines of up to $100,000. President Clinton had offered to sit for a 4-hour transcribed interview. Mrs. Clinton had offered to make a sworn declaration instead of testifying. But the chairman of the committee described that as a desire for special treatment and an affront to the American people's desire for transparency. Bill Clinton will be the first former president to appear before Congress since Gerald Ford did so way back in 1983. When President Trump was subpoenaed by the committee investigating the January 6th raid on the Capitol, he sued the panel and they backed down. Bill Clinton was acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein, but has said he never visited his private island and ended contact with him 2 decades ago. Hillary Clinton says she never met or spoke to Jeffrey Epstein.
Be a very, very high-profile hearing. If it's fully televised, rather than behind closed doors, everyone will be watching.
To the UK now, because the parents of the schoolboy Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to manage the behaviour of his killer.
The 15-year-old was stabbed to death by another student during a school lunch break a year ago today. And a new independent review found that All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield failed to identify Harvey's killer as a risk, despite reports of him carrying a knife.
A North of England correspondent Katerina Vittozzi now reports.
Missed opportunities and serious failings. A new review into Harvey Wilgoose's death in a school corridor, stabbed by a fellow pupil, has identified several times where the 15-year-old school could have done more to keep him safe. Harvey Wilgoose was stabbed by Mohammed Umar Khan, also 15, on the 3rd of February last year. This is CCTV from that day. Khan stabbed Harvey with a 13-centimetre hunting knife that he'd brought with him into school.
Umar Khan was sentenced to 16 years in prison after a trial here at Sheffield Crown Court. During the trial, we learned about violent and increasingly concerning behaviour of Khan, but this new review shows also serious failings to identify him as a risk much earlier on.
Umar Khan moved to All Saints in spring 2024, but 130 incidents of his violent and weapons-related behaviour from his previous school were not reviewed or acted upon at All Saints. In October, pupils reported Khan had a knife and a BB gun on a school trip. He was searched, but there was no other follow-up. There was no follow-up in December either, when an axe was found in his bag at home. And no one searched Khan on the day that he killed Harvey, despite a fresh knife allegation against him.
To see in black and white the chances they had to step in, the signs that they were missed, and how many opportunities that there was to protect our boy is something that nobody should be going through. We'll always be angry by what happened to Harvey, but more than anything, I'm determined to unite people, bring changes for the better. I'm determined that no other family should be sitting in court listening to how their child was killed.
The CEO of St Clair's Multi-Academy Trust, which runs the school, says it's clear the report has identified areas for improvement and that it's already implemented robust measures and will continue to take action. The Department for Education told us that it too will reflect on the report's findings and ask all schools to do the same so that no pupil is put in harm's way. Katerina Vittozzi, Sky News, Sheffield.
Now, we wanted to return to the NASA groundbreaking mission to send a rocket around the moon that's been delayed until at least March after a liquid hydrogen leak was found during testing. We're joined now by Megan Christian, the reserve astronaut at the UK Space Agency. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, your first reaction on how big a blow it is and how big a surprise it is to see this delay?
Well, you know, it's a shame, but it was a test, so it could always happen. And I mean, the wet dress rehearsal went well, but it didn't go perfectly. And if you're going to send humans to space, it needs to go perfectly. So I wouldn't say that it's a huge surprise. You know, if any little issue came up, then they were going to delay it.
So it's a leak, wasn't it, of hydrogen? Can you just talk us through, like, how serious is that? Is that like something where they're just kind of erring on the side of caution, or is that something that could actually put the lives of these astronauts at risk?
So hydrogen is the fuel that they use along with oxygen, and it's notoriously difficult to handle because hydrogen is a very, very small molecule, which means that it can escape very easily. And these are the kind of issues that came up for Artemis 1 as well during the wet dress rehearsals there. There's this problem of being able to contain that hydrogen. And if you have a large buildup of hydrogen, then it's very flammable and it could explode, which is great when you want to launch a rocket, but not in the places that you don't want. You don't want anything to explode where it's not supposed to.
I'm sure. This is obviously a big blow to everyone involved, particularly the astronauts. How much will it weigh on them, being all prepared, getting ready to go for this weekend, and then knowing they have to wait for another month?
Yeah, they've been in quarantine for the past 2 weeks, so they will have been readying themselves to be able to launch, you know, very, very soon. But they knew that this could happen. It's happened many times in the past that astronauts have had to come out of quarantine and go back into it again, so they'll just be resetting and getting ready to go, hopefully in March.
So often we have to wait, or you have to wait, for the perfect conditions to launch. Is it certain that there will be a viable slot in March or not?
There's definitely a launch window in March, but there could be weather conditions that prevent it. So it's possible that it's pushed back again until April.
And you were talking about being in quarantine. I'm quite intrigued by this. What does being in quarantine actually mean? And does it mean that if it's been delayed by a month that they've got to do another month in quarantine?
They do have to spend another 2 weeks in quarantine before their mission, because basically you want to make sure that they don't have any illnesses or anything that they're taking with them to space, because they need to be in the best condition possible as they go into their mission. So unfortunately, yes, they will have to go back into quarantine before they launch.
I was hearing earlier from Thomas, our science reporter, about how significant it is that of these astronauts, I think I'm right in saying that it's the first Canadian, the first woman and the first black astronaut to leave Earth's atmosphere. Is that right?
They will be the first to go around the moon, yes, or to go, you know, to the moon. So this is it's a historic mission, and it really shows that space in the future will be available to everybody, you know, because we see that representation there.
At the same time, what is the response when people say, well, obviously we actually landed on the moon many decades ago, and this is just going around the moon?
The first Apollo mission to go to the moon was Apollo 8, and it went around the moon as well. So this is just basically the first test in a series of missions, the Artemis missions. And this time, instead of going to the moon a number of times, we're going to go to the moon and stay there. So we will have a station orbiting the moon, and we will have an outpost eventually on the moon itself. So this is about going to the moon and being there sustainably, staying there for a long period of time.
And what's the, I guess, purpose of it? You know, an awful lot of money is spent on this, a kind of mind-boggling amount of money. Is there any, I guess, benefit to doing missions like this, other than, of course, just increasing our understanding, showing that we can do it, all that kind of thing?
Well, it's really the next outpost of human activity. So there is very much an aspect of understanding what we can do when we push ourselves to those limits. And if you think about the Apollo program, there were 36,000 patents that were produced that came out of the Apollo era in the US alone. So these kind of technology spin-offs that can be used on Earth will be able to help us, give us tangible benefits. And of course, that money is not disappearing. It's not going to the moon. It's being used here on Earth. So it's building the economy here at the same time. And who knows what we'll be able to achieve in the future.
Megan, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
To be clear, I'm still completely blown away by just going around them.
I am as well.
I was
I'm
just asking for the context.
Yeah, we're just playing devil's advocate in our role as presenters. We're excited about this.
Yeah, we're not being, whatever.
We're very excited.
Oh, leaving Earth's orbit.
That's amazing.
Round the moon.
I can't wait to see the pictures as well.
On the topic of space, we're going to stick with this because an extraordinary business space story came out yesterday. Elon Musk's SpaceX is taking over his artificial intelligence company, XAI. That also houses X as well, so Twitter plus Grok, essentially.
So Elon Musk is billing this as an innovation engine. And Wilf, I wondered if you could unpick that for me. Is it an innovation engine? What's the significance
it is on the surface. Why would you merge a sort of social media company and a space company? But I guess that's not exploring enough where the overlap could be. And essentially, you know how all of this AI compute power that's needed for us to be able to ask complicated questions on our phone, the computing is done elsewhere. It's done in data centres. And so the holy grail that he's trying to allude to here is putting data centres in space.
Wow.
And that is because of two key factors. You could have immediate, abundant, free energy from the sun if they've got solar panels all around them.
Solar panels are a bit more efficient in space than here in the UK, I guess.
Exactly. More sun up there than down here. And similarly, one of the other big problems with these data centres is then cooling them. They get very hot, very cold in space. So if you can get the economics right to get those data centres into space and then do all the computing up there, obviously he's got Starlink that connects us via satellites to the internet, then it could be, with a lot more innovation and development, something that is great, across the board. It could be very profitable, it could be very efficient, it could be better for the environment. And that's where the merger of his AI company and the spacing comes together. I think the other thing this is getting a lot of coverage for is it's what we call a related party transaction. One of your own companies is buying the other, no cash is changing hands, just shares in one to the other. Very, very rich valuations being talked about, and it raises that question again. People said broadly across AI space and markets of, we're getting a sort of bubble-like territory when you're starting to do deals with yourself. So something to watch. But in the short term, people seem to like it, and high likelihood that this combined entity will publicly list on the stock market. It'll IPO at some point this year.
Let's talk cancer next, shall we? Because after months of delays, the government is expected to soon release its long-awaited National Cancer Plan for England. And look, we know hospitals are struggling to keep up with demand, patients waiting long for treatment after diagnosis, and that is the key thing when it comes to cancer speed. The delay, of course, leads to worse outcomes.
Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, has delved into the challenges and shortcomings of the current state of care.
The UK is not alone in the challenges being posed by cancer, but other countries are achieving better results.
Welcome to a cold morning in Copenhagen.
In the 1990s, cancer survival rates in Denmark lagged behind many of its neighbours. But 25 years ago, they made cancer a political and health priority. And it's worked. Peter is 69. He's been diagnosed with bowel cancer. He's undergoing a month-long training regime before his operation after an AI algorithm picked him out of thousands of patients.
His complication risk drops tremendously from the 35% to below 20%. So a very considerable reduction in the complication risk.
He's been targeted.
He's been targeted.
Because of his age, comorbidities.
Exactly.
Because of his physical condition.
Yes, exactly.
Like the NHS, Denmark provides state-funded healthcare which is free at the point of use. But long waits are almost unheard of. And here, their cancer survival rates have also been improving.
Man heler bedre. Jo bedre din kondition jo bedre heler du, og jo hurtigere heler du.
But Denmark didn't just have one successful cancer plan. Over the past 25 years, it's had 5. They started by improving patient care and saving lives. Now, they're looking at how to give their patients a second chance at life after their cancer.
which is then saying that...
Ashish joins us now to break some of this down for us. So just, again, remind us what we're getting today, and do we come at it with sort of potential criticism, a lack of work over the last decade, or optimism about where it'll take us?
Both, certainly both. The cancer plan for England was delayed by a year. It was supposed to be announced on World Cancer Day, which is on Wednesday. So we'll get the full details of the plan tomorrow. But we've had government trails over the last couple of weeks setting out just some of the areas they want to target. Faster diagnosis is the key, moving diagnosis into the community with these community diagnostic centres, so spending more money on diagnosis, prevention, lifestyle and treatment. And the key, as you were both explaining a little earlier, is early intervention. The sooner you can get to a cancer, the better the outcome for the patient. I think a delay of a month increases your, or decreases your survival rates for that cancer by 10%. So it's absolutely crucial you get to the patient quickly. And once they're seen by a GP, that referral, that cancer pathway should start almost immediately, and it isn't. We haven't met that target since 2014. So coming back to your original question, we're way behind. Compared to developed health systems in richer countries, we are languishing almost at the bottom of every metric with those league tables. But at the same time, cancer interventions through science, the medicines, the therapies, the cancer vaccines, everything has moved so far forward. And even when I spend time speaking to cancer patients, they'll tell you, when I started my cancer journey 4 years ago, my life was on hold. I didn't know whether I'd have another medicine to take for next month. So they were living literally month to month. And now the medicines are easier to access, they're easier to take, you can plan travel. So improving the quality of life for a patient who's on that cancer pathway is also crucial.
Yeah, it feels like such a key thing, doesn't it?
So we're going to hear lots more tomorrow. I mean, we'll get the report tomorrow. Tomorrow's World Cancer Day, so that's when they'll announce the plans.
Yeah, and I guess the speed and all that kind of thing is such a big part of it as well, isn't it, in the sort of diagnostics?
It's huge, yeah, and that's why they want to invest in cancer diagnostic centres. They want artificial intelligence, they want to use cutting-edge technologies, and all of this takes investment and it takes buy-in from politicians, clinicians and patients.
Ashish, always good to talk. Thanks very much for coming on.
After the break, we're going to be talking to royal commentator Jenny Bond about the ongoing fallout from the Epstein files.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello again. Let's bring you up to speed with the news this morning. Police are reviewing allegations that Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence after documents released by the US Justice Department seem to show him leaking market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while he was serving in Gordon Brown's government.
Family of Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to protect him. The 15-year-old was stabbed to death by another student in Sheffield last year. An independent review has revealed the school failed to assess the risk his killer posed.
And NASA has been forced to delay a mission to send its Artemis 2 rocket around the moon due to a liquid hydrogen leak. It was discovered earlier on today during a test and forced to terminate early. So they're having another rehearsal in March, and that will determine when the launch is going to happen.
Now, Sarah Ferguson's charity has announced it will close for the foreseeable future following fresh revelations about the former Duchess's relationship with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, joining us now is the royal commentator, Jenny Bond. Thank you so much for being with us. I guess, firstly, what's your reaction to this latest tranche of emails that we saw on Friday? There's some pretty eye-catching examples in there, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it just goes on and on, shocking. Every time I think that it's over, or we all think it must be over, it certainly is not. And there's probably even more to come. But I think what we saw in the latest batch of emails is, A, how brazen, I suppose, the ex-prince is in his dealings with Epstein, crouching over a woman on the floor, looking at the camera quite gleefully, it seemed to me. I don't know what that was all about, but it was the most bizarre photo, to put quite a kind word on it, I suppose. And then Sarah Ferguson has come out extraordinarily badly in this latest batch of emails. For all her sins, and there have been many that Sarah has committed over the years, I've always thought that she was a good mother, but I find it impossible to defend her today. I mean, I do hesitate to criticise another woman's parenting, but what mother in her right mind would take her two daughters, aged then 19 and 20, to see a convicted paedophile 5 days after he came out of jail? I mean, who would do that? I don't understand. Well, I think I do understand why both she and Andrew were caught up in Epstein's poisonous web, and that is because of their utter inability to think of anything other than money, their pure avarice.
We should say the emails come from accounts described as Sarah and Ferg, and it's not been proven who they come from, though Sky News does understand they have come from Sarah Ferguson. Jenny, you mentioned there a kind of interest in money. Is there also a revelation here of the scale of entitlement and I guess lack of awareness, which perhaps you'd apply to Lord Mandelson as well?
Yes, well, obviously the Lord Mandelson case is, could it be more serious than the Royals? Well, it's certainly as serious, involving national security. But, I mean, maybe Andrew involved national security as well. I mean, again, his judgment over having dinner with an unknown 26-year-old Russian woman offered to him by Epstein. We don't actually know if they had dinner, but certainly the offer was made and he leapt at it. There seemed to be no warning bells in his head saying, well, this could be a security risk. The two of them, the pair of them, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have disgraced themselves beyond all means, really. And I think the palace are distraught about it, but have absolutely washed their hands now of Andrew. They've stripped him of everything they can. And I thought it was interesting, the only statement that sources have made is that Andrew he now has to deal with his own conscience as to whether he testifies or not. They say it's between Andrew and his conscience, whether he does comply with the many requests to say what he knows about what went on, because that's the only thing he can do now to help the poor women and girls and children who were abused by Epstein.
Yeah, and those calls, you know, for all of the reasons that you state, are just going to grow. It's absolutely correct to say that. I was interested to get a bit more insight into how you think this is going to be going down in the palace, because, as you say, you know, the king has reacted pretty strongly. You know, he's sort of stepped in to distance Andrew. He's stripped him of the title of prince. But it must still be a bit of a body blow inside the palace to see just the extent of what happened.
Mustn't it? Yeah. I think they feared there was worse to come in the many millions of emails that were going to come out. But I think that this is some of their worst fears, really, have been realised. But they have washed their hands of him. Clearly, the monarchy is still being tarnished by what's going on. But I don't see what more they can do with Andrew. They have taken this draconian action at the end of last year. And short of banishing from the United Kingdom or banishing him from every royal residence, I don't see what they can do. And he is the king's brother. He is the uncle of the future king. He is always going to be a part of that family, whether he is stripped of his royal titles or not. I mean, what's going to happen at family funerals, at some family weddings, perhaps? I think that they fear a little bit for his physical and mental well-being. Obviously, there's a security. He is a security target, so they've got to look after his security. And sources have suggested that they are concerned that he's under intense pressure, and his mental well-being has to be looked after. Having said that, yesterday we see him very happily, it would seem, driving through Windsor Great Park, waving at the crowd, smiling, trotting off on his horse at another part of the day. So he doesn't look too worried, does he?
Jenny, do you think the King and Buckingham Palace could have moved faster with the actions they took late last year? I guess there's a balance of needing a catalyst to take much greater steps than the prior monarch had taken. I guess a different way of saying this is, does it reflect badly on Queen Elizabeth II?
I think a mother will always defend her children, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd always believe your child, even an adult child, if they came to you and said, no, of course I didn't, no. And again, Andrew has always protested his innocence and continues to do so. But I think that was the dilemma that the late Queen was in. She saw the best in him and believed the best of him. Charles has taken his time, some would say, as it was, nearly 3 years before he stripped his brother of everything. But that came after a lot of revelations, and a key revelation, I think, was that his brother had lied quite obviously on BBC, on Newsnight. He had said he'd severed all links with Epstein, and had clearly not done so. We're learning, in fact, those links have gone on for years afterwards now. And so I think that was the tipping point for Charles. Some will say, yes, he took his time about it, but when he did act, he acted with a ruthlessness which surprised all of us. Even seasoned correspondents like myself were gobsmacked when he stripped his brother of everything.
I'd have to say, seeing the latest revelations, latest files, they will probably be glad that they did act with that ruthlessness. Jenny Bourne, thank you so much. Great to have you on the programme.
Should mention as well, of course, that in a 2011 interview, Sarah Ferguson said, "I would never have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. I abhor paedophilia and any sexual abuse of children. It was a gigantic error of judgment," and a reminder that being named in the Epstein files is not a sign of wrongdoing.
We want to talk to you now about a story that is sweeping the United States, from Arizona, where police are now searching for the 84-year-old mother of the Today Show presenter, Savannah Guthrie, and say they're now treating her home as a crime scene.
So Nancy Guthrie was last seen by her family at a house near Tucson in Arizona on Saturday night and was reported missing on Sunday around lunchtime, which led to a search using helicopter, drones and dogs. As you said, it's sweeping across America because Savannah Guthrie is the most famous, successful breakfast show presenter and news anchor. She obviously works for NBC, which is also owned by Comcast, as is Sky, so it's a sort of sister company. But you know, she does election night coverage for NBC. She presents the breakfast show.
And you work with her?
Yeah, I've worked with her very closely over the years with my time in the US, and she's, you know, extraordinarily talented, yet also wonderful and down to earth and great and very supportive. So just adds to the feeling of your heart going out for this really extraordinary story and scary story. And of course, the longer the search goes on, the greater the fear is. And yeah, just thoughts and prayers with Savannah and her family at the moment.
Yeah, because she's disappeared, and there is clearly got to be some reason that the sheriff and the investigators are saying they believe somebody took her.
Yeah, exactly, treating it as a crime scene. We'll bring any updates when we have it on that story.
Now, continuing with another potential crime story, an armed robber who tried to break into the bedroom of the actor Anya Taylor-Joy has been jailed. Our correspondent Oliver is looking into this for us. So, Oliver, what's going on here?
This is a really terrifying incident that has happened to Anya Taylor-Joy, but also to her rock star husband, Malcolm McRae. Now, Anya Taylor-Joy, you may remember her from The Queen's Gambit, from Peaky Blinders. At about 1 o'clock in the morning in February 2023, they were staying in a London mansion when they heard the glass breaking. McRae goes downstairs armed only with a light. He sees these two masked men, runs back to the bedroom, barricades him and his wife inside as the armed robbers are trying to get in using a crowbar. He then shouts through the door saying, "I've got a gun, I've got a gun." They flee and they leave. 9 days later, though, one of the robbers, Kirk Holdrick, 43-year-old man, then goes and attempts to rob a property in the fancy Sandbanks area down in Poole and Dorset. This time, he holds hostage a mother and her daughter, holds a gun to the daughter's head and says that he will kill the daughter unless the mum can open up a safe, at which point she can't open up the safe, but he manages to get away with £200,000 in cash, in jewellery, in designer goods. Now, Holdrick is a career criminal, somebody that has served long stints in jail before for doing these similar types of crimes. He was found guilty. He pled guilty. He got 12 years for the Sandbanks robbery, 3 years for the attempted robbery involving Taylor-Joy and Malcolm McRae. But this is an incident that's left them feeling really, really vulnerable. They said that they feel like they're going to be targeted again. They feel like they've been single-handedly sort of targeted for who they were and where they were staying.
So 15 years in total?
12 years in total. Another 4 years will be added if he gets released. So he'll be on licence for another 4 years.
OK.
It's extraordinary. The violence of it is
horrible.
Terrifying.
It's another level.
Thanks very much. Now, tape of Ozzy Osbourne, recorded after he was fired from Black Sabbath, has been discovered in an attic, dusted off and played out for the first time. And Sky News was there to witness the very moment.
Here's our culture and entertainment reporter, Gemma Pepley.
Recovered from an attic and dusted down, this is an old tape recording of Ozzy Osbourne.
I had this tape, which Ozzy gave me.
It was found by this man, who met the heavy metal pioneer early in 1980. This was a few months after the singer had been fired from Black Sabbath, and he spent a few weeks rehearsing in Suffolk to try out something new.
I've got a tape somewhere, and my wife says, "Not in the house, I've searched everywhere." She said, "I bet you I know where it is. It's in your workshop, in the attic," and there it was. I found it in this briefcase.
And you were sort of nervous about trying it?
Because, as you can see, it's one of those, and if they do twinkle up to sometimes, and I haven't got a machine like this one, and I daren't play it, to be honest with you, so that's why I didn't do it.
So we're going to see...
I hope we are, yes.
We're going to see now.
Let's hope there's something on there.
Could this be a lost tape? Those unheard recordings famously discovered years later? With decades of imperfect storage likely to have taken a toll, it was a long shot.
This See, that's him. That's him. Very bluesy.
So, not a lost master tape. Instead, a recording that captures a more relaxed time behind the scenes. This is Ozzy with the late Randy Rhoads and Bob Daisley, a make-or-break point in his career. They went on to recruit drummer Lee Kerslake and released the first album, Blizzard of Oz.
Well, as soon as I heard it, I thought, well, yes, that's us, and that's Ozzy's voice. I don't know what drummer that would have been on that tape, but it's definitely me and Randy and Ozzy. We knew straight away. As soon as we played together, we said, yep, it clicked, and we knew that it was going to work.
Experts say the tape is significant not so much for the music, but for what it represents.
It's an incredible artifact, I think. So, you know, it's not a fully formed song, it's not a last master tape, you know, it's not from the vault that's going to be, you know, sold commercially for millions, but it captures a really significant moment in Ozzy Osbourne's life. These things you don't hear that often. You don't hear the songs put together or the beginnings of a relationship in a studio, because they're usually wiped clean or lost.
Ozzy, of course, went on to sell millions. For Chabby, the heavy metal legend's death in the summer brought back memories.
He was wonderful. I mean, he's wonderful company. Quite emotional, really, but it's very good, isn't it? You know, it's very good.
Ultimately, this tape holds a little piece of rock history, the reinvention of Ozzy Osbourne, the start of his second act. Gemma Peplow, Sky News.
We're going to have a quick look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The week looks unsettled with spells of rain in the south and some snow on northern hills. It'll stay rather gloomy, windy and chilly this morning. Northeastern Britain will see further showers, wintry to quite low levels, and bring wintry showers to low levels with disruption, with southwestern Britain and the southeast of Ireland looking fairly wet. Expect some drizzly outbreaks elsewhere. Southern England and Wales will see rain becoming a little more extensive by midday, but turning increasingly patchy west of high ground. Elsewhere, there'll be little change. It'll be colder overall with a significant wind chill. The Welsh peaks can expect snow later, while rain will take over more of central England.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Coming up, we are talking to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, Sarah Davey, I should say. He is coming up after the break. An awful lot of questions to put to him.
OK, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, eh?
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Thank you very much. Okay, but
Listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page
and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war, and all around us was destruction and the sound of battle. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Hello again. Well, we said we would be just before the break, and I'm very pleased to say we're joined now by Sir Ed Davey, who is the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning.
This morning. I want to start on Lord Mandelson. Police now looking into whether they should investigate formally these claims that he leaked sensitive government information to Jeffrey Epstein, a man who was a billionaire and a paedophile. I mean, what is your reaction to this?
I think we're all completely shocked. It's jaw-dropping, these emails, and it's absolutely right, the police investigating. I think they'll probably have to do a formal investigation, a criminal investigation. I mean, the evidence is pretty stark. For someone right at the top of government to be leaking on a daily basis really serious issues, that's why I actually think, yes, he should obviously be stripped of his peerage, there should be a criminal investigation. I think in due course we need a national inquiry, a public inquiry into the impact on national security and indeed British victims of Epstein. I think we've got to get it to that level. The fact that a Deputy Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Business, should be able to do this, and then it not being known about in Whitehall, so he's appointed to the Ambassador of the United States. It's quite extraordinary.
On that appointment, the US Ambassador, and what Number 10 will say is they weren't aware of the full extent, which is correct, which is true. The person who pushed for that appointment was Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. Does he need to lose his job over this?
Well, I think Labour MPs will be absolutely furious. Many of them blame Morgan McSweeney for the many failures of this government, the failures to tackle social care and health, to make such bad economic judgments, and the general failure of this Labour government. And I think the fact that Morgan McSweeney appears to have been Peter Mandelson's biggest champion and a push for his appointment raises even more serious questions about his future. Obviously, it's up to the Prime Minister and the Labour Party, but I know what I'd do.
And what would you do?
It wouldn't be in my employment.
The thing about this story is I feel like for many people, they'll look at it and it will confirm what they have believed all along, that there is a set of elites within Westminster, politicians, the media too probably, who don't think the rules apply to them, who care about money, who care about influence and treat other people differently. Are they right?
Yeah, well, I think that problem is huge. Public's distrust in our institutions, in our democracy even, is at levels I've never seen before. And this just makes it worse. That's why we have to take this so seriously. I've called for this public inquiry, but I think we should go further. The Lords has to be reformed. I mean, we should be able to strip peerages, from the Baroness Moans of this world, and obviously to...
So you want legislation to go through to allow that power to happen? Is that what you want to say?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd want to see a broader reform of the House of Lords, and indeed a reform of our politics, whether it's our electoral system, or the way the Commons works, is so much. If we're going to restore public trust, those sorts of political reforms have to happen. And by the way, we need government to do its job properly. One of my real concerns about this Labour government, they were voted in for change after a disastrous period of Conservative government, particularly changing on our economy, on the health service, and they failed. And, we, as Liberal Democrats, are the only ones putting forward a clear plan about how you rescue our NHS with our policies on care and on the economy. And, unless people see democracy and government delivering for them, they're going to lose trust.
On that, you talk about your platform. I have to say, I did note a Guardian article, a couple of weeks ago, where they spoke to some Lib Dem MPs who want you to be much braver, more forceful. Just to read some of the quotes, we need to have a development of a national story for the party to tell. It's not good enough. At the moment, it feels a bit like gruel. Ed needs to be mindful that it won't take much more for colleagues to become really frustrated. Are there a bit of grumblings on your own side that you're not punching through enough?
Well, listen...
You're like the fourth party now.
Opposition is always frustrating, particularly at this stage in the Parliament, and particularly when the government is doing so badly. But we are the only party with plan. People understand that. On the economy, we're the ones with a customs union proposal to grow our economy.
Why are you in fourth? You haven't, Reform are the ones who are grabbing all the headlines, right?
Let me deal with that.
Bumping along.
Let me deal with that. I actually feel a moral responsibility on me to win. Because of people like Reform. We are facing a real threat from Reform and probably propped up by the Conservatives, some sort of coalition of chaos on the hard right, which either would undermine our democracy. I feel a moral responsibility to beat that. And if you look at the seats we can win, they're the seats that would stop Reform and the Conservatives. So we have a moral responsibility to win. The last election, we got our best result for 100 years with 72. We've been winning at local elections. So last May, for the first time ever, Sophie, we beat both Labour and the Conservatives at a set of local elections. And last year, which party won more council by-elections? This is really important. Which party won more council by-elections than anyone else? It was the Liberal Democrats. My game is winning because we have a moral responsibility.
The only reason I'm interrupting is because I know we're about to go off air, and I asked viewers for some questions that I really want to squeeze in. Kieran says, who's more dangerous to the country as a potential leader, Zach Palansky or Nigel Farage?
I don't support either of them. Farage would absolutely undermine our democracy. I think Zach Palansky would take us to quite a left wing.
So who's the most dangerous?
Well, I want to stop Nigel Farage more than anything, and I've made that really clear. Nigel Farage represents a politics which would divide our country in a horrible way.
We're out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Davey. Good to have you on the show. Plenty more coming up, including, of course, some of those issues we were just exploring in that interview about the consequences of the latest Epstein files.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Bridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Scotland Yard will investigate if Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence by leaking Downing Street emails to the dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein.
Sarah Ferguson's charity says it's closing after more embarrassing emails are published, supposedly between the former Duchess and Jeffrey Epstein.
The parents of Harvey Wilgoose say their son will still be alive if his school had missed opportunities to protect him from his killer.
Plus, we'll speak to the director of a new documentary that takes an unprecedented look into the life, death and musical talents of Jeff Buckley.
And bad news gets worse for space junkies. This morning, a rehearsal for the Artemis moon mission goes wrong and the launch is pushed back a month.
A very good morning to you. Scotland Yard is looking into whether there should be a criminal investigation into Lord Mandelson's relationship with the dead paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein after allegations he leaked sensitive documents to him from the heart of government.
Pressure also building on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and also his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. They also feature in the latest drop of files from Friday, and we're going to bring you the details of the pretty astonishing emails in just a moment.
But first, Mari's here to discuss some of the details in and around Lord Mandelson, and the police are now assessing the situation.
Exactly that, yeah. They're looking into these allegations of misconduct in public office and really looking into, as you were saying, those what looks like leaked emails between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein about highly sensitive information, about, bank bailouts after the financial crash in the Eurozone, and about potentially trying to get rid of Gordon Brown, getting to stand down. It is quite astonishing, some of the stuff in these emails that have come out over the weekend. And so the Met Police have given us a statement where they've said the Met has received a number of reports relating to alleged misconduct in public office. The reports will all be reviewed to determine if they meet the criminal threshold for investigation. And so we now have a situation where we don't know if they are going to actually investigate this or not. We'll have to see. But even the possibility of that, while Peter Mandelson is still in the House of Lords, is uncomfortable optics, to say the least, for the Labour Party and for the Prime Minister. We are having opposition parties now trying to call into question the Prime Minister's judgment around being so keen to want Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the US until autumn of last year. It's the SNP that are saying that. It's also the Conservative Party saying that. It's Reform UK saying that. They are all trying to point the finger at Keir Starmer and say he should have known better. And they are also trying to say that actually, there were some elements of Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson's relationship that we were already aware of, and that perhaps in hindsight, easy to say in hindsight, that should have been enough to not actually go there and steer clear of Peter Mandelson in the first place. We've then got Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, asking for a full investigation into exactly what's gone on while he was the business secretary under Gordon Brown, and the fact that these emails were sent, it appears, at that time as well. So it is, this is not going away. The story has really got legs.
And I guess one of the other questions is whether or not he should go over to the US and testify. That was something, I tried to get out of from the Health Minister who was talking to us this morning. Let's just have a listen to what she said.
I mean, people should support the women, the victims. Should Lord Mandelson, I think people should take part and
I'm
should
not asking
support.
about people. I'm asking about a specific person. Well, Lord Mandelson, should he go and testify?
Ideally, people should. Anybody who has got information and should
Lord Mandelson go and testify?
Well, that's a yes, isn't it? Because anybody who's got information should support the investigation. Should be as open, as they can be, and as whatever they know to support any investigation, whether that's there or, as you specifically highlighted here now about those emails, and as you say, sensitive government information. It should all be open, of course.
You can kind of feel the government line moving in real time, I feel like, this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just from yesterday in the lobby briefing, where It took a while to get it out of them, but for them to actually say on the record, yes, we want Peter Mandelson to give evidence, after they've already specifically called out Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor on the weekend, that was already a shift. And again, managing to get that out of Karen Smythe, it took a while, but managing to get that out of a government minister, I think, is significant, that they are perhaps reluctant to try and, be so vocal about slagging off Peter Mandelson, as it were, but they also, to an extent, don't really have a choice. And I think what was really interesting is this morning there's this article in the Times where Peter Mandelson has given an interview, and he's talking about, his view on things and his perspective on things. And it is quite illuminating. So let's just read some quotes here from the interview so you can see his mindset. He says, perhaps he wanted to be a mentor, he's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and I was naive in regarding him as a good faith actor. There was no reason to shun his advice, but I was too trusting. And then he goes on to say, hiding under a rock would be a disproportionate response to a handful of misguided historical emails, which I deeply regret sending. If it hadn't been for the emails, I'd still be in Washington. Emails sent all those years ago didn't change the relationship that I had with this monster. I feel the same about the recent download of Epstein files, none of which indicate wrongdoing or misdemeanour on my part. And when you were putting that to Karen Smythe, the government minister, this morning, I mean, she was clearly quite shocked by some of what Peter Mandelson had to say, and was really trying to say that actually he is not necessarily living the same reality that we are.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good way of putting it. It's true, it's very true.
Mark, great stuff. Thanks so much. And we should also just bring you what the Lib Dems views on this. This is Sir Ed Davey talking to Sophy on the topic just last hour.
It's absolutely right, the police investigating. I think they'll probably have to do a formal investigation, a criminal investigation. I mean, the evidence is pretty stark. For someone right at the top of government to be leaking on a daily basis really serious issues, that's why I actually think, yes, he should obviously be stripped of his peerage, there should be a criminal investigation. I think in due course we need a national inquiry, a public inquiry into the impact on national security and indeed British victims of Epstein. I think we've got to get it to that level. The fact that a Deputy Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Business, should be able to do this. And then it not being known about in Whitehall, so he's appointed to the Ambassador to the United States. It's quite extraordinary.
Now, that was Ed Davey last hour, of course, calling for a public inquiry. We've talked plenty about Lord Mandelson. Let's run you through the latest emails involving Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson now. Overnight, her charity, Sarah's Trust, announced it will close for the foreseeable future following fresh revelations about the former Duchess's relationship with Mr Epstein. More emails to Epstein from a sender believed to be Miss Ferguson emerged on Monday, including 2 from 2010, which is after Mr Epstein's conviction.
So in one email, an account called Sarah told Epstein he was a legend and added, I really don't have the words to describe my love, gratitude for your generosity and kindness. I'm at your service. Just marry me. In another email, a user called Ferg, which Sky News believes to be Miss Ferguson, asked Epstein when he was going to employ her. He replies he'll visit London in the coming weeks. The account called Ferg responds, my friendship is steadfast to the end, even after the body is cold. Love you now and always. We do have, I guess, the closest thing to a right of reply from Sarah Ferguson, which is an interview she gave in 2011 where she says, I would never have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. I abhor paedophilia and any sexual abuse of children. It was a gigantic error of judgment, and we should say, as we have been saying throughout the morning, that just being named in the Epstein files, not in itself a sign of wrongdoing. Now, the parents of schoolboy Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school hadn't missed opportunities to manage the behaviour of his killer. The 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death by another student. It was during a school lunch break a year ago today. And a new independent review found that All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield failed to identify Harvey's killer as a risk, despite reports of him carrying a knife. Here's Katerina Vitozzi.
Missed opportunities and serious failings. A new review into Harvey Wilgoose's death in a school corridor, stabbed by a fellow pupil, has identified several times where the 15-year-old school could have done more to keep him safe. Harvey Wilgoose was stabbed by Mohammed Umar Khan, also 15, on the 3rd of February last year. This is CCTV from that day. Khan stabbed Harvey with a 13-centimetre hunting knife that he had brought with him into school. Umar Khan was sentenced to 16 years in prison after a trial here at Sheffield Crown Court. During the trial, we learned about violent and increasingly concerning behaviour of Khan, but this new review shows also serious failings to identify him as a risk much earlier on. Umar Khan moved to All Saints in spring 2024, but 130 incidents of his violent and weapons-related behaviour from his previous school were not reviewed or acted upon at All Saints. In October, pupils reported Khan had a knife and a BB gun on a school trip. He was searched, but there was no other follow-up. There was no follow-up in December either, when an axe was found in his bag at home. And no one searched Khan on the day that he killed Harvey, despite a fresh knife allegation against him.
To see in black and white the chances they had to step in, the signs that they were missed, and how many opportunities that there was to protect our boy is something that nobody should be going through. We'll always be angry by what happened to Harvey, but more than anything, I'm determined to unite people, bring changes for the better. I'm determined that no other family should be sitting in court listening to how their child was killed.
The CEO of St Clair's Multi-Academy Trust, which runs the school, says it's clear the report has identified areas for improvement and that it's already implemented robust measures and will continue to take action. The Department for Education told us that it too will reflect on the report's findings and ask all schools to do the same so that no pupil is put in harm's way. Catherine Totzi, Sky News, Sheffield.
It's an appalling story there. We're talking about the space race next. NASA's groundbreaking mission to send a rocket around the moon has been delayed until at least March. It's after a liquid hydrogen leak was found during testing. It was discovered earlier today during rehearsal, which was then forced to terminate early.
A little earlier, we spoke to the reserve astronaut at the UK Space Agency, Dr. Megan Christian, who gave us an update on the Artemis 2 crew who were preparing for the launch.
They've been in quarantine for the past 2 weeks, so they will have been readying themselves to be able to launch, very, very soon. But they knew that this could happen. It's happened many times in the past that astronauts have had to come out of quarantine and go back into it again. So they'll just be resetting and getting ready to go, hopefully in March. Basically, you want to make sure that they don't have any illnesses or anything that they're taking with them to space, because they need to be in the best condition possible as they go into their mission. So unfortunately, yes, they will have to go back into quarantine before they launch.
So Thomas is here to talk a bit more about this again, I'm delighted to say. So Thomas, just remind us, are we locked on for March now?
Well, they hope, if they can resolve the issue, but it's down to the engineers. We don't yet know whether they're going to have to roll the rocket back to its hangar, which, remember, last time when they rolled it out, that took 12 hours. So it's a major undertaking to get this beast back in the inside so they can do these kinds of repairs. They need to work out how much hydrogen was being lost. Now, it's highly explosive, this propellant. You can't stick 4 people on board if there's a danger of the whole thing going up in an almighty explosion. So they want to resolve this to make sure that it is safe.
And I guess the reason is, as you say, because there's 4 people on board, it's like a manned mission, right? I'm quite intrigued as to what is happening to them now, because they must be kind of building up to the launch, and now what, they've got to go back in quarantine?
They were in quarantine since 21st of January in Houston, and that is to shield themselves from any bugs and so on, because they don't want to be in a capsule with 3 other people with a horrible sickness bug or something like that. So they take these precautions. They've been released.
Norovirus in space, not fun, I can imagine.
Absolutely, yeah, in zero gravity. So they have been released to go back to their homes, do other stuff they want to do, but then 2 weeks ahead of the potential launch on the 6th of March now is the most likely date, they'll go back into quarantine. But all these things need to be resolved because NASA is against this other countdown clock. At the back of its mind, and indeed the White House, they're locked in this space race with the Chinese to get back onto the lunar surface. And these delays tend to build up. This mission is already delayed severely by well over a year. And the White House wants to land on the surface by 2028. That is already looking highly optimistic.
Because the Chinese are going to land by 2029, or what? What was
2030 is their date, but we don't really know what's going on. They're much more secretive, of course, than NASA, but we know they're very capable. They've got their own orbiting space lab, a space station. Their launches are very reliable. Will they suddenly overtake the United States and get back on the lunar surface?
It's so... the geopolitics of this is fascinating, because the space station is everyone around the... Like, we collaborate with the Russians there, right?
Yep.
But not the Chinese.
Not
no.
the Chinese.
Extraordinary.
We don't do that much, alas.
No.
Tim Peake.
Tim Peake went up, yeah.
Yeah, but we're not at the heart of it.
Europe is providing the critical life support module for this mission.
There we go. I stand corrected. Albeit not entirely corrected. We're not at the heart of it. No. Thomas, thank you. After the break, we'll speak to Emily Thornberry for her views towards the government's handling of Lord Mandelson's position in the party. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live.
They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. As you can see, I'm joined now by the Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornberry. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
What do you think needs to happen next on behalf of the government as it relates towards Lord Mandelson's position in the House of Lords?
You know, I'm not so interested in all of that. I personally, I mean, sure, you know, chuck him out of the House of Lords, reform the House of Lords, all of that's a given. But really, this goes so far beyond it. I think this is so serious. The idea that a cabinet minister is acting against the interests of the cabinet, against the interests of the country, handing information to a paedophile who is associated with the biggest bank in the world in America,
and telling them to mildly threaten the Chancellor of the Exchequer is really serious and can't be dealt with by way of just being chucked out of the House of Lords, in my view. I think that it is just one of the worst things I've heard. I mean, we've heard some terrible things, you know, in recent years. We've heard some terrible political scandals. You know, I mean, PPE, and which you know was wrongly bought, wrongly sold, and ended up probably with people dying. I mean, I appreciate that that's a worse scandal, but this is so deliberate and so treacherous that I just think, I mean, you know, I'm of the view that the whole House of Lords thing's a little bit of a sideshow, and that the behaviour is so bad that it's something that the police should be investigating. Clearly, the police are starting to look at it. They've said as much. It sounds like you think about time towards that, and we'll all wait to see what comes of it. It sounds like Gordon Brown is furious.
Yeah.
We spoke to a former advisor to Alistair Darling this morning who's furious. Does Keir Starmer need to be more furious than he seemingly has been so far? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I think the thing about Keir Starmer, as with many people, you know, in the position that he's in, is that he's quite careful, wants to look at all the evidence, you know, wants to consider a situation, but then once he's made up his mind, he's made up his mind. And so I think that yesterday the evidence was coming in so quickly. Every time I picked up my phone, there was another email. You know, so it's not really appropriate, I think, for a Prime Minister to just respond immediately. I think they do need to, you know, even in today's world, where you want to have a story every couple of minutes, I think that it's right for a Prime Minister to sit back and work out what the best way of proceeding is. Obviously, as you say, new information is coming to light in recent days. Does it reflect poorly, though, on the initial appointment of Lord Mandelson as ambassador to the US? Yeah. I mean, I think it does. But I do also understand it. You know, we've got Donald Trump. Really, there's been no president like it. And kind of, what do you do for an ambassador like that? And I can understand why the temptation was to take a risk, to do something unusual, political, and something that might work, and someone who would get on with Trump, and that's in the interest of the country. I get all that. And I think I've yet to hear any convincing evidence that he did anything other than a thoroughly good job when he was ambassador, you know, and that's important. But there was also a huge risk. And I think that it exposes the weaknesses in our vetting process and in our due diligence process. We had the Mandarins in front of my Foreign Affairs Committee, and we asked them what the vetting process was. And to be honest, it's so clunky and old-fashioned. I mean, it's like, it kind of harks back to the 50s, you know? It's really, the vetting process is just like, well, tell us if there's anything that we should know about, and we will double-check it, you know? And the due diligence just seems to be, look at open source, put it in a document, hand it over. They didn't even have Mandelson in to ask him any questions, which, you know, we said in the Foreign Affairs Committee, this is a political appointment, this has happened before with political appointments, put the person in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee so that we could ask questions, because we would have Googled, we would have said, well, what about this friendship? What are you doing with this guy? You know, do you have any loans from him? Because you've had loans from your friends in the past. But are you implying the Prime Minister didn't even Google? I mean, I'm suggesting the Prime Minister is a busy man, right? And in the end, he does have to rely on other people, and he has to rely on the people who give him advice. And I think, you know, if we sit back and be completely fair about this, think of all the things that are on the Prime Minister's desk, you know, which is why politics is a team sport. And you rely on the strength of your whole team. You can't be expected to do everything. So the due diligence was done by the Mandarins, the advice is done by advisors, and then you make a decision. I guess where I'm getting to, a lot of people mention again how close Peter Mandelson was to Morgan McSweeney. If the Prime Minister is only as good as the advice he gets, does that final filter, perhaps the advocate even, for Lord Mandelson, does there have to be questions of Morgan McSweeney's position? I think that checks and balances exist, and we should have paid more attention to them. I think that they should have listened to me when I said I want him in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee, because if he had been in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee, it would have all been in public, and we would have asked him questions and he would have needed to answer them. He might have lied to us, but he would have lied to the public as well. And I think that actually, if you're going to appoint people in a political way, as opposed to a career,
you know, ambassador or a member of the Foreign Affairs, you know, of the Foreign Office, then if you're going to take a risk, then actually one of the checks and balances is the Select Committee.
There's obviously the potential to testify in the US to the House Oversight Committee, albeit very difficult for the US to compel anybody to do that as a foreign citizen. There's obviously, as you've already alluded to, a police inquiry at least. We'll see where that leads. Should there be anything else? Is there something parliamentary that should be triggered? Should there be Ed Davey call for a full public inquiry? What's your view on that?
I think this comes down personally to the checks and balances before someone is appointed. But I think that the biggest checks and balance is the conscience of Peter Mandelson. I mean, he knew all of this. He always knew this. It was open to him to say, actually, I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think I can do this, or I resign, or there's more to come out, or I don't want to embarrass the government, or I don't want to embarrass my friends, or I don't want to embarrass the Labour Party. I think I need to step away. I've made some terrible, terrible mistakes. And it was open to him to do any of that, you know. But instead, what does he do? He goes, oh, I don't know. I've forgotten. Oh, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. You'll have to prove it.
Emily Thornberry, we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll hear from the Conservatives. Alex Burkhart will be here.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
Welcome back. A reminder of the headlines this morning. Police are reviewing allegations that Lord Mandelson committed a criminal offence after documents released by the US Justice Department appear to show the former cabinet minister leaking market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while he was serving in Gordon Brown's government.
The family of Harvey Wilgoose say their son would still be alive if his school had missed opportunities to protect him. He was 15 when he was stabbed to death by another student in Sheffield last year. An independent review has revealed the school failed to assess the risk his killer posed.
And NASA has been forced to delay a mission to send its Artemis 2 rocket around the moon due to a liquid hydrogen leak. The issue was discovered earlier today during a test which was forced to terminate early. Another rehearsal set to go ahead in March, and the outcome will determine when the launch will take place.
Well, look, we're focusing today on the latest Epstein revelations and in particular what they mean when it comes to Lord Mandelson. We've got Alex Berger here, the Shadow Chancellor at the Duchy of Lancaster, who joins us now. So police now investigating or looking into whether there should be an investigation into claims that Lord Mandelson leaked sensitive government information to Jeffrey Epstein. What's your reaction to this?
Oh, it's just really shocking, isn't it? Because it would appear that when Lord Mandelson was a minister in Gordon Brown's government, he was taking very sensitive, market-sensitive information, sharing them with his business contacts, one of whom happened to be Jeffrey Epstein, who was already by that stage a convicted paedophile and sex trafficker. So I just like every time we get the next sort of stage of revelations in this story, it gets worse. And you've got to wonder where it will go next. And one of the things I said to the government in the House of Commons yesterday is that the government really must look at what Peter Mandelson was doing whilst he was our ambassador in Washington. Because if he was behaving like this in 2009 and 2010, then what is to say that he wasn't behaving like it last year? And we know that in February last year, Mandelson arranged for the Prime Minister to meet one of these very big US data companies, which was a client of Global Counsel, which is Mandelson's business. So, look, let's just get all of this out in the open now. I don't think the government should fear transparency. Let's just get everything out.
And what is the best way to do that? Because there's been calls for public inquiry on this programme already. Does Lord Mandelson need to go and testify in the US? Do all of these things need to happen?
I mean, obviously there's going to be... I hope there will be a police investigation in this country about the 2009 stuff. But the government should hold just a full inquiry into the public life of Peter Mandelson. That touches on what he was... not just what he was doing in 2009, but also what he was doing in Washington, but also gets to the bottom of how he was appointed in the first place. Because it was known last year, when he was appointed, it was known that he had had this long, unhealthy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Why was he appointed? What information did the Prime Minister have? What information did the Prime Minister's team have? And why was that not enough?
I mean, I guess what they say, and it's important to put their perspective here, is that when he was appointed as US ambassador, they didn't know any of this stuff on the Epstein files, right? They knew, of course, he knew Jeffrey Epstein, but a lot of people knew Jeffrey Epstein, right? They didn't know the details. Well, that's what they say.
Yeah, and I'd like them to be completely clear with us about what they did know. So let's publish the documents that went to the Prime Minister, publish the documents that went to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and the private office. Let's just get it all out in the open. Because, look,
you mentioned there the Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think he specifically has questions to answer?
Well, look, he certainly does, because it's been reported that he was the person pushing Mandelson for the job. It's been reported that he has a long-standing relationship with Peter Mandelson. But look, whoever it was, somebody needs to take responsibility for the fact that this appointment happened when it shouldn't have done. And it's been incredibly embarrassing to the country, but also potentially put the country in a very dangerous position. The reason we have security and vetting processes is to prevent people who could be subject to blackmail, who might have compromat on them, getting into top jobs. And that didn't happen in this case.
Now, it's important for me to say, Lord Mandelson denies wrongdoing. He says he's got no recollection of the emails. He's questioning the authenticity of the financial transactions. Can I just finish on a broader question? Because I feel like, for a lot of people, this story, and I'm talking about Mandelson, but I'm talking about kind of the whole shebang around Epstein, just proves what they suspected all along. that there's like a kind of like a corrupt political elite that don't think the rules apply to them. Do you think that's accurate?
I think that could certainly be said of Lord Mandelson, and it seems to be the case that no matter how many times he was fired, he kept being brought back by the Labour Party, and I think that that's totally inexcusable.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Alex Berger there for the Conservatives.
Let's talk about all of the day's political news with our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who's here with us. Sam, very good morning to you. I don't really know where we should start. The revelations towards Lord Mandelson as they unfolded yesterday relating to his time as Business Secretary, what stands out for you?
Look, I think it's all very serious. I think we're moving to a crunch point, if I'm being honest. And that crunch point could come as early as tomorrow. I think that the Conservatives, who have some parliamentary time tomorrow, are going to potentially force a vote that is going to be incredibly tricky for Labour MPs. And it's a vote to disclose some of those papers that shadow cabinet ministers are calling for the release of. Parliament has the power to force disclosure of pretty much anything in government, and the Tories smell blood. They think that, for instance, some of the due diligence work, the due diligence papers which haven't been revealed. The security advice I revealed on the podcast this morning, that there were red flags around financial connections of Peter Mandelson raised in advance of his appointment to Washington. All of that area could be subject to release if the Commons votes for it. I have been talking to Labour MPs over the last 24 hours, and they tell me they could abstain or maybe even vote with a Tory motion, quote, if it deals with the problem of Morgan McSweeney. There is huge amount of anger, and there is a chance right now that within 24 hours, Keir Starmer finds himself in serious difficulty on the floor of the House of Commons.
It's interesting you mentioned there Morgan McSweeney, who is, I guess, the kind of advisor who's managed to survive before, if you like, because in both of the opposition interviews we've done today with Ed Davey, with Alex Berger, they are mentioning him by name, basically. So, I mean, could that be the kind of sacrifice, if you like?
Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, is undoubtedly the lightning rod. Keir Starmer always had a mixed view of Peter Mandelson. There were points where he kept him at arm's length. When Peter Mandelson was ambassador to the US, he used to speak to Morgan McSweeney several times a week. Over the summer of last year, Morgan McSweeney's wife had a fundraiser. She's an MP, by the way. Lord Mandelson, then ambassador, went to that fundraiser. They go back years, and there are quotes from Peter Mandelson praising Morgan McSweeney. Now, he is an absolutely critical figure, the bedrock figure for Keir Starmer. So don't underestimate the cynicism that's going on amongst opposition MPs. Of course, they can see a way of damaging a Prime Minister. But the problem is there are a lot of Labour...
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it. As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.